right? Hiring a agency to build their app or website. And that was a very fragmented space because these are the kind of things which had a very high ticket amount. So building an app or building a website costs a lot of money at times, depending on what the complexity of the business is. So what would happen is that, and also you're outsourcing something which you don't have knowledge of. So it is very easy for the service provider or the agency to make the fool of a founder, give them subpar products but charge the full price. And this kept happening in the ecosystem. I saw it, right? That apps would stop working a few days after they have been delivered, or people would take an advance and run away with that money, and there is nothing that anybody could essentially do about it because you'll not go and fight it out in the courts. So what essentially happened was that I decided to solve for this problem by building a marketplace of digital service providers, right? So again, a simple way to explain that is think of Zomato, right? If you buy a burger from Zomato, right, you pay Zomato the money. After the burger has been delivered to you, Zomato gives the money to the restaurant, right? If the restaurant has not delivered the burger, the Zomato returns the money back to you. So when you have a mediator in between, right, it adds a layer of checks and balances. So that is what we were building. It was an amazing, amazing journey. We built the prototype, we did a lot of testing, and it was going really well. We had a consulting vertical as well because I was a very young kid who was starting a company, and I wanted a constant stream of funds. So I was like, we'll earn money from the consulting vertical and funnel it in the product vertical. So that's how it all started. And after 2 years of doing that, I was like, even though this is going really well and there's no issues, we are profitable because the consulting vertical is working fine. I still feel that I am at this point in my career not at a competence where I would be able to take it to a stage where it can become like a huge company, right? So I wanted to just go out there in the market, learn, and then eventually see if I ever want to pursue entrepreneurship again, which is why I did my MBA from Narsi Munji, Mumbai. And then I got a summer placement from Narsi Munji in Naukri.com, right? And I joined as a marketing manager there. And I had a 1.5 year stint in Naukri as a brand manager, where I was working on some very, very interesting brand campaigns for the brand. And finally, I also, since I did a lot of product work as an entrepreneur, I always had this thing that I am also very passionate about product, right? So let me see if I can transition to the product domain. I was very clear on that since the beginning. And that is why I made an internal move within the group, InfoEdge group. I went from Naukri.com to AmbitionBox, which is a reviews and ratings platform, as a product manager. And I joined them as a product manager. And I have been working in AmbitionBox since, and it is going really, really well. So that's a gist of what my journey has been so far. But as you will be able to tell that, I am not somebody who's a specialist at this point. I am not a specialist when it comes to marketing. I'm not a specialist when it comes to, product. I am a kind of person who is more of a generalist. And this is something which has been almost a conscious choice, especially after doing an stint as an entrepreneur. Because what I've realized is that some of the most complex problems that you can solve are going to be interdisciplinary, right? Those business problems don't have those factory line like separations where, okay, only a marketing person can solve it or ops person can solve it. It is, some problems are very interdisciplinary in nature. And again, just to illustrate an example of that, I'm going to talk about one case study, right? So imagine that you are working in a automobiles company called Swallow Sidecar. It is an actual company. It was a very, very old company. And you see that in one country, the sales of the car are not as high as another, right? Even though the market is very mature, there is the wealth is there, the intent to buy cars is there, but only your company's cars are not selling, right? And they're not selling as much as, you know, the cars are selling in other parts of the world. So it is, why is that happening? You have tried every possible solution. You have tried, uh, playing with the pricing strategy. You have tried marketing. You have done everything, right? And that country is Germany, right? And as you did more and more research, you brought in more people in the team, you did more research, what you realized was that it's the place where the car is not selling is Germany, right? Essentially, when you shorten the name of the company, which is Swallow Sidecar, it becomes SS, right? And that is what was associated with Hitler's army's initials were also SS, right? And it's creating a sort of a halo effect where there's so much negativity associated with that sort of connotation that it's having an impact on your brand. And that is why it is not selling as much as you think that it should. And finally, that company also ended up renaming themselves and they started calling themselves Jaguar. And we all know that it's doing quite well now. So, this is an example of how interdisciplinary problem solving works, right? Because if somebody doesn't have, in this case, for example, just a marketeer or just a product person or just a mechanical engineering expert will not be able to solve this problem. This required a very cultural nuance, having understanding of a bit of history, a bit of what the societal structures are like to solve this problem. So this is what complex problem solving is like. It will not be divided like simpler problems. So which is why it requires an interdisciplinary knowledge of things. So again, this is something I used to keep hearing from people when I was doing different things, that jack of all trades is master of none. But as popular as that quote is, this is actually origins from the origins of that are from William Shakespeare. And the full quotation is this, which people conveniently have, shortened. So the full quotation is that jack of all trades is a master of none, but often better than a master of one. So that is why I'm building a career as a generalist. However, I do believe that even as a generalist, it is very important to view your career like a T, the letter T, right? You should know a lot about different domains, but have a specialization in one, right? And that is the best way to be a journalist. So, for example, if you want to be a data scientist, you should know everything about being a data scientist, all the nuance to it. But it's also great to know a little bit of coding, a little bit of business, a little bit of operations, and that is what will give you an edge over just an expert. So, since I have worked in marketing and product, what I also wanted to do was I wanted to make an attempt at teaching you the core learnings or the core concept of both these domains in 1 minute each. And I'm going to attempt that. Not sure if it will happen, but yeah. So I'm going to start with product, right? So this is like a timer of sorts. So it's going to start in a circle. Let's see if I can, end up explaining product management core concepts in like 1 minute. Okay, so it started. So when we talk about product management, right, any product manager is nothing but a problem solver, right? And their job is to achieve some business goal by solving for some critical user problem. And this business goal and user problems are essentially two sides of a same coin, right? Both go hand in hand. An example is that imagine the business goal is to increase the traffic of the website. But in order to increase the traffic of the website, you need to have content on the website that people find useful. Otherwise, people will not come on the website. So you have to figure out what information you're giving to people and what problem it's solving for them. And then the traffic of the website will increase, which is the business goal. Now, this is a very classic way in which people explain product management, that it is an intersection of UX tech and business. UX is user experience, tech is tech, and business is the business goals. However, I find another method to be more suited and better at explaining this entire thing. So I'm going to use that sort of a framework instead of this, but both are the same thing. Once I'm done explaining, you will be like, okay, they are exactly the same, just articulated differently. Uh, okay. Sort of I went over the 1 minute mark, but yeah, that's fine. So when we talk about product management, right? Um, I'm gonna give you an example, and that is the best way to learn product management, right? So think of you being like a manufacturer or a CEO of a company that manufactures this toy, right? Now, you want to sell this in the market, you want to sell this to kids, right? And when you are making strategy for this, you are trying to think whether you should ship it with batteries or without batteries, right? So if you ship it with battery, it's like a nicer experience. The kid opens it and the insect is roaming all around. So it's a better thing to do user experience wise, shipping a toy like this with batteries. So that is the desirability part of the equation, that we know for sure that a kid is gonna have a better experience once they open the box and see this toy and they switch it on and it starts working, instead of going to the hassle of finding batteries in the house, putting it in. So that is the user experience part of things, right? That's that circle. And I like to call it desirability. Do we want this, right? We want to ship it with batteries. The second part is, the tech part of it. Can the engineers of my team build a battery that will last long enough from the shop to that reaching to the toy reaching a kid's hand, right? So if you make the decision, the tech team will be like, again, given enough resources, we can make that battery and we can ship it. So that's the tech part of things. And the final part of things is, I mean, whether we should do it or not, because then you have to think about the business, that if you're shipping this with batteries, you're increasing the cost of the product, which means that you're reducing the profit margin, right? So is it really worth it from a business point of view to sell this product with the batteries or not, right? So again, the answer of that question will depend on a lot of analysis that you do. But that is what the job of a product manager is, to figure out this intersection of desirability, feasibility, and viability. And what is the best thing to do in a particular situation, asking the right questions, deviating the business to the right goal, right? Now, so that's what a product manager does. However, what I've also seen a lot of times is that a lot of PMs end up spending a lot of time in the feasibility and viability part, right? Can we do this? Or should we do this? But they forget the desirability part, where it is more about the user. And the question is whether the user even wants that thing or not. So a disproportionate amount of time goes in these things, but a lot of times people don't focus on the user part, where you're trying to think from the shoes of a user and be like, do they really want this feature? Do they really want this sort of this additional thing that we are giving them? Otherwise, if they don't want it, there's no point in having these two conversations, right? So that is what, like, a gist of what being a PM is, finding an intersection between all of these three things. Um, Another example that I would like to use to explain the role of a PM and what is the nature of the problem solving that we do is the iPod example. This is also a very nice case study. So essentially, in the early days of portable music, there were a lot of MP3 players that existed in the market. I also had one, a tiny little player, like a pen drive. You had to download music in it. And, very portable, nice little thing that I used to use. iPod came fairly after those devices were in the market, right? So the user problem that people were thinking of was that portable music is needed. But Apple went one step ahead. They were thinking, okay, portable music is one thing that the user needs. But what are the other problems that a user are facing, right? So as they did more and more research on it, what they realized was that downloading music in these devices was an absolute pain. You know, I also had this tiny iPod, right? It was so difficult to upload music in some of these devices was that I ended up buying a cheaper version of an MP3 player so that just downloading music in it is a easier task. So they discovered, okay, this is like a problem which a lot of users face, but nobody is really doing anything about it. And what they ended up doing was they came up with iTunes, right? Now, iTunes iTunes ended up solving that problem completely and also solving for a little bit of other tiny problems that the user used to face, right? For example, the number of songs that these iPods can hold, or the pain of downloading music again and again. A new track comes in, you will download it on your laptop, then put it in the device. iTunes solved for all that. It became a revenue stream for Apple and also like an absolute success from the get go because they picked on a problem that every user was having and they solved that problem beautifully, right? So one another thing that we need to keep in mind as PMs is that even though it is very important to look at the user when you are trying to figure out a problem to solve for, but the solutioning needs to come from you, right? No consumer of Apple would have told them that, okay, make iTunes. iTunes as a solution would have come from some team member in Apple, right? So again, this is also a very beautiful quote which demonstrates the same thing, where Henry Ford says that if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. Whereas the problem was going from place A to place B, and Henry Ford came up with cars which solved the exact problem, just in a way better manner and via a solution that no consumer could have ever thought of. Right? That is what visionary PMs do. They rely on the consumers for the problem. They use their own thinking for the solution. So this is what gist of being a PM is like. Now coming to marketing, right? I spent 2 years in marketing, very, very interesting stint in Naukri as a PM. Sorry, as a marketer. So I'm gonna again try and explain the concept of marketing in 1 minute, at least these basics, and then delve into it further as I go. Right. So um again, I am not gonna start off with a definition of marketing. Everybody knows what marketing is, right? I'm gonna talk about the biggest challenge that happens in the world of marketing today. The problem is that there is so much information load. Everywhere you see, there are ads. It is very difficult to make your message stick with the audience. Today, if I show you 10 ads, right, after half an hour, you'll forget what most of those ads were about. So, what makes an ad stick in the minds of consumer? So, earlier when I had not joined marketing, what I thought of is that it's all about creativity. If Indians are like super creative and we come up with very, very creative ad concepts, it's gonna stick with the audience. But as I worked in marketing, what I realized was that was only a tiny part of the thing, and that was not even the most important thing. Every stellar marketing campaign comes from an insight, and it is used consumer insight or a cultural insight, and that creates a connection and resonates with them, and that becomes memorable. So it's the insight which leads to communication strategy, which leads to a creative strategy. Now, again, in order to explain it properly, I'll use an example. I'll talk about a campaign that I myself worked on, and it was my first brand campaign, and very, very exciting work that I did in with my team on that. So essentially, I was assigned the Women's Day campaign for Naukri. And as I'm working on that campaign, I'm thinking, what can I possibly say on Women's Day that has not been said already? Since decades, big brands have been celebrating Women's Day. Every big brand in the world, from Coca-Cola to FMCG, other FMCG companies, everybody has been talking about Women's Day. What is this new, unique thing that I can come up with in a matter of a month, right? So this is what I was struggling with. And that is when, my senior team members and my manager explained that you need to come up with an insight that is going to lead to a communication strategy. So as I was working on it, what happened was that I saw this picture online, right? It's an interesting picture which essentially demonstrates that in the corporate world, for men, it is a sprint. For women, it's a hurdle race, right? I'm like, this is a very interesting concept. And that led to a thought coming in my mind where I was thinking that everybody starts from the beginning in corporate, right? Men also start at the same place, women also start at the same place. They also finish at the same place. Say the finish line is being a CEO, right? So there are a few women who end up becoming CEOs, right? Very few, but they do exist, right? But those women have had a hurdle race, whereas those men who are their counterparts have have had a sprint. So these women end up being more talented, right? By logic, maybe not like in a practical sense of the way, but by logic, it seems like they have won a hurdle race, and on the same side, the guys were competing in a sprint. So what I ended up doing was we came up with a campaign called More Than Equal, right? That some people say that men are equal to women. Some say that men are better. We say that women are more than equal because every time a woman reaches the top, they have had to go through a hurdle race, whereas every time a man reaches the top, it is a sprint for them, right? And that is what the campaign was about. And this is just like uh, the last few, frames of the main brand film, where we said that hire women not because they're equal to men, hire them because they're more than equal. And Naukri.com remains committed to connecting women with jobs that deserve them, right? So now in this campaign, the insight was whatever I explained to you guys, right? How it came. I realized that some women are even maybe more talented than men who reach the top, right? So all that is the insight. The communication strategy is more than equal, right? And the creative strategy that we used here was that to depict this entire message, what we did was that we made an animated film of twins, right? Where it's the guy who's telling about his journey as to how both of them are born in the same household. Both of them are at the same age, but how their life experiences are different, right? So, for example, in this frame, this lady says that, when this guy takes science, she's like, oh, great, great. When this girl takes science, she's like, oh, are you sure? So the subtle differences that exist in the way that men and women are the way that men and women are raised, that is the how we depict it. And via this journey of the twins, we demonstrate the message, and that is what the campaign is about. So again, going back to it, insight was what I explained as to the hurdle race, all that. Communication strategy is more than equal, and creative strategy is using an animated movie to depict the message, right, of more than equal. So that is how strong brand campaigns become. The stronger the insight you have, the better the brand campaign will be. So again, just to give you another example of beautiful insights that can lead to very, very strong brand campaigns is once I went to Calcutta, right? And during Durga Puja, I was attending Durga Puja in Calcutta for the first time, and the entire place was full of banners of different companies, different ads. They had tried the most creative things. There is a tomato sauce ka ad, and they have actually pasted tomatoes on top of it just to grab attention, right? I'm looking at all that jazz is there, right? And suddenly I see one poster of Bumble, a simple yellow colored poster exactly like this, and only one line was written on that poster with the same font, right? Black font, nothing fancy. And that line said that set high standards, meet somebody who matches that standard, nothing less. And the reason why I remember that one line and not everything else that I saw there is because I belong to that cohort, right? I belong to the age set. And they have done a lot of research on the age set, and they know that a lot of young people, when they're dating, they face this sort of a conundrum where when they start to find it hard to find somebody, they start to lower their standards. Okay, we are being too picky. That is what happens, right? And they address that exact same thing where they said that set high standards, meet somebody who matches that standard, nothing less. And that is why, that campaign really worked, right? And I, as a consumer, still remember it. So, this is an example of, again, using an insight to make sure that it sticks in the mind of consumer. I saw that banner only once, and again, that is how good the recall of that same was, just because it was coming from a very deep consumer problem. Now, similarly, one day I was having a chat with my other marketing friends, and we were just brainstorming. And somebody one my manager, I think, said that I was thinking about Jeevan Sathi and Shadi, and I came up with a very beautiful insight for their brands. I've not thought of a communication strategy or the creative strategy, but just the insight. And the insight that he told me about was that imagine the concept of marriage, right? How different the concept of freedom is in a marriage for both men and women. Women are told something like कि जो करना है पति के घर जाके करना, right? अभी ढंग से रहो. Whereas men are told the opposite thing कि जो करना है अभी कर लो, बीवी आ जाएगी तो all that won't happen, right? And that's an insight, and it leads to that aha moment that, oh yeah, that is so true, right? And this is again an example of a very beautiful insight. But the question is, where do these insights come from? Again, like I was telling in product, right? No consumer will come and tell you these insights in so many words. That concept of marriage is different for both men and women. What will essentially happen is that you, as a marketer, need to do several interviews of these consumers. You have to talk to them about their life, about their journeys. You have to meet both men and women. And if you are a good marketer, and as you become more experienced, you will be able to, you know, pick on some insight like this, but it will strike you as an epiphany of sorts, but it will not be articulated by the consumer in these words. So that's what marketing is like. Moving on to the next thing, making career transitions. It is very, very difficult at times. And because there is this classic problem that you can't get a job without experience, you can't get experience without a job, right? But I think anybody who wants to make a career transition needs to like pause and really think about how badly do they want it. Because the strategy that they're going to use to make that career transition is going to be impacted by the answer to that question that you ask yourself. Because uh, I'll tell you how I made it happen, right? So I was very clear since the beginning that I wanted to go in product, right? Now, what happened was that I joined in Naukri as a marketer. And again, even though I loved the role and the team was incredible, I somewhere knew that I want to go to product, right, eventually. And I started doing several courses. This is how it started for me. I did a lot of online courses. And then I ended up doing like a very intense boot camp of sorts for aspiring PMs, where you do a lot of project work, you do a lot of, case studies and stuff like that. And they really teach you product management to the core. So it was courses, then the boot camp, and then a lot of practice for interviews and all. And once I felt that I was ready, I decided to, reach out to people within my organization first and apply for a role. But again, it worked out for me. But I know for a fact that a lot of times it's much, much harder, right? Internal transitions is one of the easier ways to enter a new domain. Otherwise, it is way harder when you go and do it on the outside world. So again, I was very well aware of this when my friends also transitioned in their careers. And when I was in my business school, right, I remember that there was a talk by like a very fancy unicorn startup co-founder. And I asked him this question. I told him that, I want to be a product manager, but I don't have any experience in product. I don't have a tech background. How will I make it happen? Right? There are no companies who come to NM for placements, for PMs, right? Hardly any. And he's like, it's very simple. It's about how badly you want it. Because if I were in your place and I really, really wanted it at no matter what the cost is, what I would do is that I would take out a list of, say, 100 startups that got funded. I would email each and every one of those founders and tell them that I'll work for free for 3 months. If you like my work, you can hire me. Otherwise, it's fine. You can let me go. And if you're actually passionate about what you do and you're prepared, they will hire you after those 3 months. And I was like, it's so risky. It's about it's I don't want to work for free for 3 months. What is this advice? And he's like, you see, that is the thing. It is not about whether it's possible or not. It's about how badly you want it. So if you want it badly enough and you're willing to put in the work to make it happen, it will happen. So again, since I've been through that journey of a transition, these are my key learnings. As I told you guys, I think continuous upskilling is absolutely essential. And if you are in an exploratory phase, I think online courses is a very good way to start off. Once you are done with the online courses and you still feel, okay, this is something that interests me, then you can go for paid courses, in my opinion. But start. It's good way to start is like free courses. Lot of resources available online. There is no dearth of resources anymore. Again, the second thing is that you really need to prioritize gaining hands-on practical experience. Now, when I was making that internal transition, I'd already worked as an entrepreneur and I was building an internet product. So that having the knowledge of that, working on it hands-on in the past really helped me crack that role. Otherwise, I think it would have been way more challenging. So if there is any opportunity that you get, right, whether it's an internship in product, if for example your friend is doing his startup and you are like, I'll help you out, I will help manage your tech team. You don't have to pay me, but just give me the experience certificate and give me the recommendation. I would be really grateful. And I just want an opportunity to learn. If you make that pitch, I think cracking like an unpaid internship within your circle is also possible, but you have to prioritize gaining like hands-on experience somehow, because it's very crucial. Also, the third thing is that I feel that it's very important to prepare very thoroughly before you start interviews. The reason for that is that in our country there are tens and thousands of applications for each and every job, right? The hardest part of a job hunt is never cracking an interview. It is getting that call, getting your resume to be seen by the recruiter. If luck favors you, then, right? And you get that one call and you are unprepared and you sit in an interview and you don't crack it, it's very tragic, right? Because I have seen the way it works. You'll apply to 100, 200 jobs, you'll get one call. You cannot squander that opportunity, which is why I always say prepare thoroughly first and then start interviewing. Otherwise, it's a massive waste of time for you, particularly. Also, the last thing, I do very firmly believe that cold emailing can work very, very nicely if it is done strategically. I think founders of mid-sized companies are almost always very responsive with emails. You can use online tools to find their email ID. You can make a passionate pitch about whatever domain that you want to transition in. And also, you can put in some work already to showcase your passion. So imagine that, there is some small company where I want to join as a marketing manager. I have no marketing experience, but I can look at their social media. I can look at their past campaigns, maybe prepare a 5 slider and tell them this is what my opinion is. It shows the passion, that how badly you want it, that you're willing to put in that work for that one application. So career transitions are very hard and it is difficult. But if you want it, it will happen, but it will require a significant amount of work. Lastly, I want to spend some time talking about entrepreneurship because it is very close to my heart. Um, I do believe that, if there is anyone who has this in their mind, they have an idea that they want to try it out, everybody should give it a shot, right? And the kind of learnings that you get from entrepreneurship, nothing can ever match it. No corporate career, nothing can match that. And I think the best part of being an entrepreneur is what you become in the process of becoming an entrepreneur, right? You become a more resilient person. You become like you know what is the kind of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into building a company, and you become a better employee also. And again, it's a beautiful journey. It's an adventure of a lifetime. So everybody should give it a shot if that's something that you have in mind. However, these are my learnings from entrepreneurship, which I'll quickly tell you about. So, one thing is that it is very important to pick the right problem to solve, right? So, what I mean by the right problem is one is that should be an actual problem, right? Um, you cannot pick a very small problem, which is like a minor inconvenience, and then build a startup on that because it will never work. The size of the market becomes very small. So, I think one of the best ways to discover the problems is any personal problem that you face, right? Or people around you face. And another way to actually discover a problem is to see what are the kind of startups that are doing really well abroad, but an Indian equivalent of the same doesn't exist. Because right now, if you look at any successful startup in India, it is something that existed abroad before, right? Airbnb, Oyo, Uber, Ola, right? Any big startup has already existed somewhere in the world, and it's a great way to figure out what is the right problem to pick. And again, size of the market is a very important concept because if the problem is not large enough and important enough for the user, they will not pay you to solve that problem for them, right? So initial breaking that first 2 year mark becomes very hard. Second is that I feel that there are very innovative methods that you can use to test product market fit. And that is what everybody should do. I will give you one example, but different industries will require different strategies. So think of it like, say you want to start a cosmetics brand, right? Say even more niche than that. Say I want to start making nail paints, which are very long lasting. So what I've seen is that nail paints chip very easily. It's very annoying. Every 1 week you have to apply them again. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna make a nail paint that is not gonna chip, and it's a problem that I personally have faced, and it's gonna be a great market. So one of the best ways to just test out that product maybe could be to build a website first, right? You go to GoDaddy, you build and nowadays building a website is as easy as building a PPT, right? You go to like some tool like Wix, you build a website, you write the core product, what you're building, you make it very beautiful, you put product in images, you make it an authentic website, and then what you do is that you start running a bit of social media ads and try and get those pre-orders for that nail polish without ever making one bottle of that nail polish, right? That is the best way to test product market fit in any physical product, right? If you're able to sell a product, there is no bigger validation. And I think that is something that even other entrepreneurs have done in the past. So think of there is this company that was there called Zappos. So the guy who started that company was like, it's very difficult to buy shoes in the right size. You have to hunt so many stores to find the right shoe for yourself. So I want to build like a marketplace of shoes, essentially like an Amazon for shoes. So what that guy did was he also built a website, right? He would go to physical stores, click pictures of the product, post them on his website, right? Then when he used to get an order, of shoes, of any of the products that he had listed on the website, he would run to that store, buy that product, package it, and ship it to the consumer. And he actually ended up building his proper warehouse, buying inventory and all. After doing all this was becoming unsustainable, and he was like, okay, the demand is through the roof for something like this. Now I can actually buy inventory, put in that work that is required to build a marketplace. Otherwise, till the time he did all, when he was doing that MVP thing, he spent zero money, right? There is no risk in doing that. So there are very innovative methods of testing product market fit. And again, never think that you are unique in any way, that some problem you have figured out that nobody has thought of. If you do enough research, you will find a way of testing a product market fit by spending very little money. And that is what smart people do, right? Third thing that I believe that everybody should do is that they should build distribution before they build the product, right? For example, getting pre-orders is distribution. Another example of distribution is, if you guys are active on LinkedIn, there's this guy called Vaibhav Sisidhi, right? He is a huge influencer, has like upwards of 300, 400,000 followers. And he that presence on LinkedIn, personal brand on LinkedIn. And after he was like one of the most, popular people in India for, LinkedIn knowledge and all, he started selling courses, right? So that entire 300,000 people who are his followers become a distribution channel, right? So again, the question you need to ask yourself is, where will my first 100 customers come from? Because the hardest thing to do in any business is to sell. And last thing, what I said before, if it is on your mind, you should definitely do it. And the only caveat is that you should have a very clear first step, though. You should know what should be my first step when I'm trying to build a business, right? So imagine if it's a physical product, do you need to crack, say, the nuances of the product first? Do you need to do product interviews first, consumer interviews first? Whatever your business is, if you're clear on what the first step is, you can start off, because when you go from 0 to 1, you will know what to do from 1 to 10, right? So never think things like, oh, I don't know so much about this, I know very little. If you're clear as to how you can begin doing something, you will learn rest of the things on the way. So yeah, that's pretty much it from my end. This is all that I wanted to share with you guys, and I'm happy to take any questions at this point now.
Yeah, Tanya, am I audible?
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah,
Am I audible?
you're audible.
Okay, is my screen visible? I think there is some network.
Yeah, now it
Yeah,
is visible.
yeah, it's
Now
visible.
it is visible.
Right. So yeah, we will be approaching towards the Q&A round now. If anyone has any questions, you can drop them in the chat box. We already have filtered some questions that were recorded in the form we sent out during gathering the registrations for the webinar. So I will be taking up those questions first, which I have already filtered. All right. Okay. So the first question is, what are some common mistakes entrepreneurs make during the idea validation phase, and how can they be avoided?
Very good question. Because the thing is that validating your idea is an extremely important thing, right? Because we always think of our, solutioning and products much better than what it is. It's like a bias that we have. So I think, again, these innovative strategies that I'm talking about for testing out product market fit is what you should do. And for your own space, try and research as much as possible for how you can build an MVP of your product, ship it, and get feedback from the consumers very early on. So, one mistake I've seen a lot of founders do is that they try to build like a very finished version of their product, right? Whereas think of an app, right? If it is, say, a marketplace of something, right? Of, say, health professionals, right? If that is something that you are starting out with, it needs to have very basic functionality, very, very basic. Nothing fancy in any way, nothing that is a non-essential. So you need to have a product that is very bare bones. Whatever your core problem is, it should solve that problem, but there are no need for any delighters or anything of that sort, right? So if you can figure out an innovative way of testing a product, like the things I discussed, getting pre-orders, getting having a hacky way of just checking if something works or not, that is one. Otherwise, if that's not possible, you build a very bare bones product, something that you can ship very fast, which solves the core problem, doesn't have any fluff whatsoever. And once you have validation from the market, you build on top of it.
All right, moving on to the next question now. So, how do you find the right product in the market according to your niche, and how to build that niche? How to know which is the right niche for you and to identify the right product for you
In terms
accordingly?
of entrepreneurship, you're asking?
Sorry.
You're asking in terms of entrepreneurship, which product to pick,
Yeah,
which product to go for.
right.
Um, See, again, the thing is ki it essentially sometimes comes from working in a particular space, right? Uh, and this is a problem that you yourself will discover. Either it will be some problem that you have personally faced, or, for example, if you have worked in some space, say you have worked in Zomato and other, food delivery startups, you might figure out some niche problem that happens in that space, which your startup can solve, right? So, an example could be that, say, delivery management softwares or warehouse management softwares for e-commerce, right? Now this is not an idea that you can come up with just research. If you have worked in e-commerce, you might be able to figure out that, okay, this is a problem I see a lot of e-commerce companies face, and if I solve that problem in some way, it can become a successful business. So it will either be some problem that you have faced, or once you have worked in some space, you will be able to see some niche where a problem is and you can solve for that problem. And I think that is the way to discover problems. But again, if you really want to start a company and no ideas are coming to your head, just do a lot of research on what are the successful startups abroad, and the ones where no equivalent exists in India. That is also a great way to start.
All right, moving on to the next and the last question from the form that was recorded. I also request you all that this will be the last question. If you all have any doubts or queries, you can drop it in the chat box so I can start taking up them as well, as we are towards the end of the webinar and we are approaching towards the end of the webinar. So, the last question from the form I will be addressing is what is the story like? What is they want to know about idea creation and how to implement that idea.
Ideas come from problems that you are facing or a consumer is facing. So the thing is that as we go on about our day-to-day lives, right, there are small issues we face issues in terms of several things. So every idea is going to stem from a problem. So entrepreneurship is nothing but problem solving. The better you solve a particular problem and the bigger the problem you solve, the better entrepreneur you become, right? So that is how you need to approach it. You need to find problems that you need to solve, right? What was the second part of your question? One is the problem part of it. The second,
How to implement that idea.
so implementation, again, it needs to start with just building an MVP of that particular product that you feel is going to solve the problem, shipping it in market as quickly as possible, and going out and getting consumer feedback. Just to explain this to you, I'll give an example, right? So what I mean when I say have a very bare bones product, right? So imagine a scenario that this is actually an example I read very recently. There was this professional cyclist, right, who used to practice every day cycling and all. And he used to face a lot of difficulty in navigating maps on his phone, right? Because you're cycling, it's not like you are driving a car. It's much more complex, and the terrains are so, uncomfortable that you can't take out your phone and see what the way is. So what he wanted to do was he wanted to build a talking bicycle compass, where it's a small device that's attached to your bicycle, attached to your phone, where they give instructions. Okay, the terrain is going to be like this. You should take a left. You should take a right. Now, the thing is, it's a very simple idea. He feels that every cyclist will face this issue, and my talking bicycle compass will solve that problem, right? So, one of the ways to actually test it is to buy, say, borrow, say, 10 phones, tape them to your bicycle handle, ask your friend to, call you on that, and you give instructions verbally, just the way a GPS would. And then ask the feedback of the consumers. Okay, we are giving verbal instructions over that phone. This is like a very MVP way of testing out whether a talking bicycle compass will work or not. Is it working for you or not? And depending on the feedback, you proceed. You don't have to go on and manufacture an actual compass. You need to find a hacky way of just going about and trying to, solve that problem with your own idea, but not really building everything first. So that's just an example.
All right. So as we approach towards the end, I'm launching a feedback poll. So it will be available on your screens right now. There are two questions here. So you can fill it up like how was this session helpful for you, and would you like to recommend this particular webinar to your friends? Until then, I am also sharing with you all some links, so you can go through them. There are some courses that are available on Shiksha Online. So these courses also provide certification as well. I will be sharing you the link. Just a second. Okay, it's not coming in the format. Let me share. Yeah, from here. Yeah. So I have shared a link with you. So these courses are for product management, and there are some free courses available for product management as well. And these courses provide you certification as well. Similarly, if you visit this link on the website, if you type entrepreneurship or if you type about marketing, so you will also get the courses that have been listed for entrepreneurship and marketing itself. And you can go through those courses. If you want to enroll for those courses, you can enroll for for those courses. And the plus point is that you will be getting the certification also, so it will be adding more onto your skill as well. You can go through this website. And also, I would like to share the Instagram handle of Shiksha online courses, so that in future, for further more webinars, you have an idea, or if you want to have a discussion for a topic of your own, so we can conduct a webinar around that topic. You can share your ideas, or you can tell us that how helpful did you find these such webinars, and what next would you like us to make a topic, anything that comes to your mind. So you can follow this Shiksha online courses. I've just dropped it in the chat box. You can follow our Instagram handle. And lastly, I will be sharing the LinkedIn profile of Tanya, so that if in case still you have any doubts or queries and you are shy to put them here, if you have anything, so you can put it out there, and she will be, I think you will be very comfortable to assist
Yeah.
them there also. Yeah.
Absolutely. Anytime, you guys can reach out to me over LinkedIn. I
Okay,
am ready
Tanya,
to
so
talk.
we have a question right now here only live in the chat box. So we'll just take this up, and then we can wrap up the session.
Yeah.
So it is written that, hello, I have started a food delivery service. That is, I provide famous food products from all over India and sell them in our city. But there is no proper response. So maybe they are trying to know that how can they promote or
They're asking for a bulk WhatsApp sender for free. So
yeah,
I'll tell you this, guys. I think WhatsApp marketing is a very good way of reaching grassroots levels in India, right? Because even if there are people who don't use, Instagram, Facebook, Google, almost everybody uses WhatsApp, right? However, my personal opinion here is that you should steer clear from using free tools when it comes to stuff like this, because if your business gets banned by WhatsApp, then you can use 10 other numbers, they will not unblock you, right? So again, start with say 10,000 messages. The cost is not too much also when it comes to WhatsApp marketing, but it's a very big risk to use WhatsApp senders for free, those free WhatsApp senders and all. And I would personally not recommend doing that. So, and since I don't use free tools and stuff like that, I don't know. Similarly, when it comes to even LinkedIn and stuff like that, there are add-ons which automate a lot of things and all, but you have to be very careful, because if your profile gets blocked on LinkedIn, if your business gets blocked on WhatsApp, it's a very big channel that you lose out on forever, right? So it's not worth the risk, in my opinion.
right. All right. So I have also shared the link for entrepreneurship and marketing courses as well. You can go through all of these links, you can save it, and you can also approach us at Shiksha Online Courses. Lastly, I will be sharing Tanya's profile as well. So that in future, if you want to reach her out for some query or for some suggestion, or if you want to connect with her, so you can find her here on LinkedIn. So I have shared her profile, the recent link I have shared. So you can follow her there as well, and she can keep sharing insights about her experience and journey, and you can keep learning from that. With that, I will be wrapping up this session. Thank you so much, Tanya, for being a part of Shiksha Online webinars. And we hope we are able to collaborate with you for future webinars as well. And it was a great session led by you, and I hope all the attendees got their answers well.
Absolutely. It was great being here. And thank you so much for having me. And yeah, happy to help in any way I can.
All right. Okay. I'll be seeing you all in the next webinar. Till then, take care and see you, San.